Welcome to another episode of Life After Corporate, my friend. And if you're new to our show, welcome home. This is where you get the straight scoop on what it takes to actually make the transition from a corporate career to launching a successful and scalable coaching or consulting business. And our guest today is Latrice Smith. I'm excited to have her on the show today. I met Latrice at a women's event in New York City where she was on stage just spouting some great wisdom for the women in the audience. And we're also members of some other communities in common. Latrice Smith is a dynamic entrepreneur. She's a lawyer, a keynote speaker, raised in Mississippi to a family of medical entrepreneurs. She earned her master's of public health, followed by a law degree from Atlanta's John Marshall Law School. She is also a devoted mother and wife. She electrifies audiences, blending her professional expertise that ignites action and inspires lasting change. Welcome to Life After Corporate, Latrice Smith.
And thank you so much for having me and for the warm introduction. Excited to be here and share with your audience.
I'm excited too, because there's a lot of legal mishaps that people make when they're launching their businesses. And we're going to dive into that in just a minute, because your lawyer is more than someone who files trademarks for you. But before we do, Latrice would love to hear about what was the impetus for you leaving your successful legal career and launching your business.
Absolutely. So, like many of the founders that we both work with, had that point of, I can tell you, I've got two of those moments. So I was sitting at my desk and I'm looking outside. I'm like, this can't be life. Like I've got to sit here in this one little spot all day. So that was kind of that one little moment of, this is not really what I bargained for. And then I can think the next one, and it's, I mean, I talk about this when I speak. So I was, if anybody's in Atlanta, you're familiar with the King and Queen Towers. My office was in there. I was working in a corporate. I had the job I thought I would love. I was in corporate. I was in house, out in a healthcare setting, on the legal team. And I was walking out. So they have a ton of road different paths to get to the garage. So we got all of us would follow each other to the garage, and then we'd follow each other to 285 and sit on the interstate for an hour. And everybody's got their bags and their lunchbox. So I was like, I'm in the Matrix. Do I want the red pill or the blue pill? I literally had that thought. I remember that moment so vividly. I'm walking down the sidewalk and we all get in our cars, follow each other out, and I'm like, I'm in the Matrix. I don't want to be in the Matrix. I like not this bill. So that was truly the moment that burned itched into my mind of this isn't for me. So I thought, well, I went to a government job, same thing, different story. And I knew that my path was to start my own business and have my own and help support my clients in a way I know I could and could do it better, like a lot of the people we work with.
So I want to ask you one more question about that, because understanding that the outside is no longer suiting the inside is the first step of realization. It's kind of surface, it's external. It's like looking around and saying, is this all there is? Do I really want to be part of this matrix? What was the internal shift that needed to happen in order for you to confidently say, I'm going to walk away from this very successful career and venture out on my own? Like, what was that voice inside, and what did you have to do to just have the confidence? Was it a faith journey? Share what it was for you.
You kind of mentioned in the introduction. So I really came from that family that was what I grew up in that world. We had my granddad was a pharmacist, my dad was a pharmacist. So I grew up in the pharmacy, standing on stools, counting pills and doing all that. So it was kind of innate in me on some levels. But I truly like the corporate structure. I like the organization of it, the setup, the thought process behind it. So that's really what led me to be where I am. I kind of take that, how do these principles and things that work well in corporate, and how do we implement those into what we call small businesses? And you can. And how do we use those models that have turned into corporations? Because vast majority of them at some point were small companies too, to create successful businesses. So I was able to really lean into my upbringing. That experience that I had growing up was a big factor in that. And then knowing that there was more opportunity if I went what was inside of me and what I knew was right and what I knew I could do and how I knew I could serve my clients, if I leaned into that. So it was really that just knowing that I could do this. There was something else out there. So take the steps and we'll figure it out. So
Yeah, well,
that's
you
what I
had
did.
role models. You had role
Yeah.
models to lean
Hmm.
on, and you had proof in your own life. So that's beautiful. And when you first started your business, what were some of the mistakes that you noticed? Because I think we launch businesses because we know we can serve and we know we can help our clients
Absolutely.
do better than what they're experiencing right now. So what were the mistakes that you saw women entrepreneurs, and it might not be women, you work with all types of small businesses. What were some of the
Right.
mistakes that you saw business owners make?
I'm really underestimating the importance of capital and how much things would cost. And that idea behind failure, the vast majority of the time is about capital. So understanding that getting along isn't bad, business debt is an important part of the process, especially if you're going to scale and grow. That's a huge one. Getting along and getting in at the right time. So understanding that you're best situated to get the capital you need before you start the business. Because if you start the business, then they want tax returns, they want profitability. But if you do it, they're looking at your pro forma and projections if you do it ahead of time. So not taking that step, being scared, not willing to bet on themselves to take out the capital they need. But that's what gives you the capital to take the long road and be successful. And so that's a huge one. And the second, probably the next biggest one is not hiring help and having the support they need in the time that they need it. I'm trying to do too much for too long, spreading themselves too thin. And so it's critical to have that administrative support depending on which or whatever that support person is going to look like that first tier. And then next time another professional to come in and start replacing you so you can be an owner and an operator instead of just being in the business all the time. So those are kind of some of the things that definitely pop to mind first for sure.
Yeah, those are two critical steps. People, for the most part, grossly underestimate what it's going to take from an investment perspective to actually get traction in their business, and you really do need that fallback of that cash cushion on hand. Now, we mentioned when we were chatting before we hit record about business planning, and why do you think a solid business plan is important when people first get started, especially when they may have a vision and they're not 100% confident in that vision? Like, how do you help them through that process and turn that vision into a solid plan?
And that's the basis of what the consulting arm of Thomas Law and Consulting is. So we have a foundational program that I created called Thrive 360, and it's built on 5 pillars of business. I kind of mentioned earlier that I'm a corporate girly. I love corporate structure. So taking that structure of what we know works for successful businesses and putting that in a blueprint for founders to take their vision and say, here's the structure. Now let's build your vision around this structure we know works. So no, I don't want to stick some random business into your vision, but we're going to take your vision and lay it through these 5 pillars in ways that make sense. So starting off with what is that mission and vision? And that's critical. That's our first pillar. And because that's going to guide everything else that comes downstream. That's going to guide our service offerings, our pricing, our target client. What are the services and what are the mission of the organization? What's the vision that you have as the founder? And how do we articulate that to clients and team members? So that's that critical piece. And how do we, that plan and having that gives clients so they know where to come, but it gives team members that to understand what they're building, what they're buying into. So having that plan, and then also for yourself, it gets tough, just like we said. So having something to say, hey, this is what we're leaning into, having that North Star to guide the process. That strategic plan is critical for success, and just that guidance when things are you get lost in the weeds.
Yeah. So what happens when people veer off their plan? How do we get back on track? Because sometimes we create a plan, the plan sits on the shelf, and it's not an active part of our day-to-day decision making.
I think staying in that, so the key time blocking, setting time aside each week, every day if you can, if it's 30 minutes or an hour every day to take some kind of activity towards that business development. So if you're working through a program and you're building out your business plan, so maybe today you say, okay, this week my goal is to look at competitors and what they're offering. This week my goal is to look at what are some marketing options. This week I'm going to assess what do my clients really need? How am I going to help them reach their goals? So taking actionable steps and planning that in your schedule, not just saying, oh, when I feel like it, or I'm going to get to it, but putting it on the calendar, setting an alarm around it, turning off your phone and sitting down in the space to really give you your brain and body the opportunity to be the visionary.
Yeah. And, we can't be tone deaf to what's happening in the world today. So there's a lot
Mhm.
of uncertainty in society, in the financial markets, in the economy, on the geopolitical world stage. Is this a time for people to reevaluate their strategic plans, their business plans? How are you working with clients in this environment today?
And that's honestly my clients. We're doing that always because
Hmm.
there's always something going on. This time
That's
now
true.
it seems bigger than normal. But if we're consistently doing that and consistently paying attention to what's coming downstream and what's happening, how it's going to affect our business, and that evaluation is critical for success as well, because the pivoting is necessary. Things on a business, we used to say 5 years, you kind of need to be ready for a pivot for different changes, but it's looking like more like 3 these days. And just be prepared for things are going to shift. People's needs are going to shift. Technology is going to shift, and so that you have to kind of be ready to pivot. And some of the companies that don't, they typically lose. Like we don't have any blockbusters anymore. Red box are gone. So you have to be prepared and looking what's coming and looking downstream.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the other reasons why people want legal counsel beyond, establishing their S corp or LLC? What are some of the other areas that you think people overlook or ignore that could be dangerous down the road?
Oh my goodness, that's such a great question, and I love to talk about this one. And we and my team talk about it all the time because we want to help people understand how critical it is. But it's their contracts. People always will seem to think about formation sometimes. I guess because you have to have that to file taxes and to be legal. People think about their trademarks, but those contracts, people will grab them off of Google, LegalZoom, and if you are running
ChatGPT.
I bet check them right. How could I forget that one? And that is, there is no way if you're breaking a template and you've got a specialized service, you want your service agreements to accurately reflect the services you're offering, the terms and conditions, the client expectation, pricing, timelines. And if you're grabbing something off the internet, it's going to be missing probably half of those things because it's going to be baseline boilerplate things, and also those vendor agreements that people are signing. So they're working with these vendors and they're handing them agreements, and people the business owners don't even know that they could be negotiating these contracts. They can save themselves tons of money. They can give the termination clauses. They can give. There's so many. Have rights to their information and their IP. It's a lot of small details that without having someone with a trained eye that would be missed and very costly at some point. And lease agreements are another one. So various types of agreements are ones because people get them because they assume because they're the small fish that they can't negotiate those, or it just is what it is. And that's very rarely the case. The vast majority of them can be negotiated. And same thing with lease agreements. Signing those lease agreements without having an attorney review and advocating and negotiating, you're leaving tons of money and opportunity on the table.
And I want to talk about partnership agreements for a second, because I think, we've hit on something. I think people gloss over their agreements.
Mm,
And many founders, when they first get started, want to have a partner.
mhm.
And I don't know what the true stats are, but I would say 80% of the time, those partnerships don't pan out. They don't stand the test of time. So if you are going into a partnership, what is important for you to think about with your eyes wide open, especially as you enter into that partnership agreement?
Just to continue the conversation we were just having, the importance of having an attorney drafting that and memorializing what the intentions are, and to have an exit strategy included in that. So, what's the ownership split going to be? What's the profit split going to be? When a profit's going to be split? What's the benchmark for those things? And if somebody wants to leave or buy the person out, or if we want to dissolve this LLC, who gets what when? Those are the kind of critical points. But having an attorney draft that, I can't really any agreement, but that partnership one is critical as well. And everybody's happy and glowy and wanting to jump in head first, and that's fine. But my job as your attorney is to be proactive and to think about what could go wrong and how do we make sure you're protected if that thing, or it might not even be anything going wrong, it might be going great, but we
Mhm.
still want to make sure everybody's on the same page and that you're getting paid what you expected, they're getting their compensation as expected, and we keep everything rosy.
Yeah, it's like a good prenup.
It is exactly like that.
And what about contracts? I mean, I would love to hear some stories of, contracts gone wrong. I know contracts don't go wrong when you create them, but have people come to you and they've been in really gnarly situations where they didn't think about the contract ahead of time?
Absolutely. That's probably one of our, when it comes to disputes, that's our top tier. What we're getting is contract disputes. And lately, it's been an influx of lease issues, people being um, falsely thrown out of spaces and leases without the proper going through the proper channels and the proper processes. So just locking people out of spaces. I've been getting a ton of calls for that about that lately. So those are the ones that send people, again, goes back to what we've talked about again, not understanding what your lease agreement says, not having that language in there. um I'm a commercial broker as well. I review a ton of leases, and landlords always try to include some type of self-help remedy so they can have in the contract that they don't have to go through the courts and follow that procedure. And we don't want that. We want you to have to go through the courts. The laws are there for a reason. So that's always something that I am looking for and going to strike. But it's important to evaluate those agreements and make sure, because it'll be one little sentence in there and it says landlord has the right to enter premises and dispose without going to court. I mean, it literally says that, it's one little line, but if you miss it, you lose your right to go to court and things like that. So
Wow.
that's a very critical one.
And, a lot of our listeners are solopreneurs in the coaching or consulting space who are working from home. And many don't think about their client agreements. And so what are some of the things that they could overlook that could hurt them later if they don't have solid client agreements?
I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. So one of the ones that's very important is, I know chargebacks are a huge one for our clients. So when it comes to chargebacks, the way we really want to protect against those is first having an agreement, but establishing what the terms are, what services that you're offering, the timeline that you're going to be offering, when the agreement terminates, how much the services are going to cost, the client responsibilities, because I had one potential client that came to me because it just wasn't clear in the agreement that I can't do the work till you provide me the things I need. So I can't keep up with the timeline if you as the client, your client responsibilities aren't met. So if I need you to bring me IP or specific information, so that's going to be marketing. I might need your logo and those pictures before I can start marketing. If I'm your accountant, I need those past tax returns and documents before I can start working and moving your file. So it really limits what you can do. So having those client responsibilities outlined are critical. So those are the pieces that are important to just having a sound service agreement.
Yeah. Any other ways that you think business owners, particularly solopreneurs, need to protect themselves from a legal perspective when they're first starting out?
Formation is a very important one. So not just setting up the LLC and not just getting your EIN, but having an operating agreement is going to be important. A lot of time, most banks are going to ask for them, but having an operating agreement, again, not just a chat GPT 101 from Google, but one that, and then again, especially if you've got partners or multiple owners that really outline the ownership and the interest tied to that. So that's one critical one, having that formation in place. Then really making sure that they've got the capital to really think through. I used to say 6 months, but I really love for people to have a year. And I'm not saying
Mhm.
use your own capital, use your retirement. No, let's set up a business plan, get a business model, talk to the right lenders, and get the capital you need because your business is going to have a strategic plan in place, so your business is going to do well. So, and then the last one I really want to lean to is fear and not believing in the vision that they've been given. The vision you have and talking to other people about it, they're not going to understand it because it was given to you. So you have to talk to experts that can help you develop it and be a partner in what you're doing, but not necessarily somebody to tell you every step of the way or what to do or to tell you to do it or not to do it. You want support to help you get there, but uh, talking to just whomever and getting their ideas is not usually the best way to go. So those are kind of really leaning into believing in themselves and not letting the fear just stop them in their tracks.
Yeah, fear is the number one killer of entrepreneurship, and fear and creativity can't exist in the same mind at the same time. And so, lean into your calling and have great legal protections. Latrice, if our listeners, do you work with everyone everywhere, or are you limited into certain states or parts of the U.S.?
Because we are business, we can help clients. We have clients all over the U.S. So I've had clients California, New York, going from California to New York. So we've had clients all over Florida. So happy to help anybody with those legal needs that are and thinking about starting that business and want to make sure their service agreement is on the right track. They're properly forming, that they're memorializing everything properly with their partners. We're definitely here to help and support in that process.
And if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to learn more about how to work with you and to get in touch?
Absolutely. So, any of your listeners, they can schedule that free discovery call on our website at thomaslaw.org. That's thomaslaw.org. And just for tips and tricks and keep up with what's going on, you can find me on Instagram. I'm Latrice Smith, ESQ for Esquire, and also Thomas Law and Consulting as well. So, love to kind of connect. If you have questions, welcome to join on that free discovery call and see how we can help you grow and get to the next level and start that business in your mind.
Yeah, thank you, Latrice. Thank you for being such a great advocate for entrepreneurs. And of course, in my world, it's women entrepreneurs, and women supporting women is such a critical thing to do right now in this particular time and climate that we're in. But we're, like you said, there's always a time, there's always a climate, there's always something going on. So get
Absolutely.
your legal house in order. Don't get your contracts from ChatGPT or Google. Contact Latrice. Make sure your plan is tight. Get the money you need to grow and scale. Thank you so much, Latrice, for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had such a great conversation. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. That's it for now, my friends. Let's make sure that you not only have your sales plan in place, but you've got a solid business plan that's going to serve you too. More next week. See you then.